Now back in Spark, I'm going to drag in the exported FBX. And we can just drop this into the scene. You can see it there in the middle. And then we also need to grab the texture we just output. And that looks good. I'll rename it text Icicle. And using Crushy, I'm going to compress it before bringing it in. Now I can just drag this in. And then in this default material, I'm going to switch it to a physically based material. And then we'll rename it matte Icicle. And then we'll change the texture to Icicle. And you can see it there in the middle. You can see it has some alpha there, but it looks kind of crunchy. And that's because we have replace set and not alpha. So that solves that. And we can just turn on alpha test down here too, just to make sure we don't get too much edge here. And we can keep it pretty low. I think even at 15, it doesn't look like it eats away too much at the texture. So with the Icicle object selected, I'm going to go to Actions, Position on Face, and I'm just going to choose this first one here, left cheek. So you can see that just nails it right on the cheek there, and it makes these patches. And because we already have a lot of this set up, it looks like it made an extra cheek down here, we can take this face and pop it directly in here. And because we're going to be using a lot of these different facial features, let's see, we already have mouth and cheek. Let's use a sender and receiver to shoot this face all around. So by dragging this output, we'll make a sender, and we'll rename this face object. So now anywhere we want to grab the face, I'll just disconnect this and instead right click and add a receiver and change this to face object. So now wherever we need the face, we'll just use a receiver, and that'll pop right into whatever facial feature we need. So I'll make some space over here. And we'll just start duplicating and positioning this kind of all over the place. So I'll just hit Control D a few times to make some copies. And then for each of these, I'm going to select them all and hit the position dot over here. And that just makes a patch for each of these. I'll just drag those out. And we have a face here, so we can just start linking stuff up. And if I drag out here, we can see all the different face landmarks we can use. So I'll just grab a chin, the eyebrows, the mouth, and let's grab the nose as well. And I'll just start connecting these all up. And so far it looks pretty uneven, or maybe a little too even. So we're setting the position of these models, but we can still go into the mesh and adjust those manually. So we can offset these a bit and also scale them up or down to add more variety. I think most of these are too big, so I'll be scaling these down as I go. And right now it looks like the icicles are kind of this dark blue and everything else is a much kind of brighter, more teal blue. So in this material, the icicle material here, we can take this color, and it looks like it was kind of a light gray already. Let's boost that up. And let's see if we can match the color just by adjusting it here. If we add a little bit more green, it matches this blue and this blue. And in emission, we can just add a little bit more lightness. That way it's more frosty like the rest of the stuff in the scene. And right now we don't have any environment. We can see what that looks like. So in environment, we'll turn that on and search the library. Just grab one of these default ones. I think sunrise usually looks pretty nice. Now you can see that added some brightness and a little shininess to these. So now we can turn this emission back down a bit. Actually, I think if we turn the emission up and the color down, that'll kind of flatten out the highlights. We can turn up the roughness just a little bit to soften those reflections out. And if we did want more contrasts in these, we can turn metallic up so you get more of that reflection and a little bit darker edges, but I prefer it with this off. And again, you'll notice the fog is behind the icicles. So again, we need to move this mouth fog null all the way down below the icicles. Now that I have these icicles on, I think the whole face could be a little bit whiter. So in the face white material, we can turn up this opacity just to make it even more frosty. Or if we wanted this kind of frosty makeup to be more intense, we could just take this makeup object and duplicate it with Control D, and that will just double up all that effect. So you can see the difference there. Now I turned up the brightness just a little bit more on the emission of these icicles. That way everything just fits together a lot more nicely. Now if you look at the eyelashes, we are getting a little bit of alpha clipping there. So if we take the makeup block and move it below all those face meshes, then that resolves that alpha clipping there. And it does put the lipstick back on top of these frost makeups, but I think that's fine.